considering there are about 5 or 6 of you, I'm sorry? The only question that I actually have is of the 5 of you. I know one of you, Sanal, I know personally. There are a couple of more readers who are, I think, somewhere outside, so I know them. But of the rest of you, how many of you are aware of this series or have read this series? Because you have all 3 books? One of them. Which one? The first one. Now, there is a reason why I'm going to ask you. And what about you? No. Right? Okay. No, because I must be careful that I don't let spoilers out. So if there are a lot of readers who have read the books, then I can feel free and talk about things that are not, there are spoilers and all of that. But I can't do that so I'll try and keep it as spoiler friendly as possible. Okay. Very quickly, Vikramaditya Veergatha is a series which is 11 years old. No, more than 11. No, not 11. Which is now 9 years old. I conceived this idea in 2011, and the whole point is it consists of 4 books. The Guardians of the Halahala, which was the first book, The Conspiracy at Meru, which was the second, The Vengeance of Indra, which was the third, and The Wrath of the Hellfires, which is the fourth, which will come out probably in February. In fact, I just finished writing that 5 days ago. So let me take you through how the idea evolved and how the concept grew. How many of you are familiar with the idea of Vikramaditya? Are you familiar with who Vikramaditya is? Yeah, king. Bringing Betal down. That's the most common story that we all know of Vikramaditya and Betal. This is the binding image of Vikramaditya and Betal. Right? This Vikramaditya from anyone who's read Chanda Mama comics would know this visual. This is from Chanda Mama, in fact. Okay. So this is the idea of Vikramaditya for most people and Vikramaditya, almost everyone knows about Vikramaditya, but people know very little about the king. And I have always been fascinated with Vikramaditya as a character. So what I did was, when I was working with a group of friends and we were trying to come out with a television idea, animated television idea for children, one of the things I wanted to do was tell the story of Vikramaditya, the king. So actually what happened was the evolution of Vikramaditya Veergatha as an idea started as an animated TV show for kids. This was never supposed to be a book. Okay. What we did was, we said, we wanted to create an epic fantasy on the scale of Lord of the Rings. We wanted to tell a story which is based on Hindu mythology, but had nothing to do with a god. We did not want to tell the story of a god. We didn't want to say, this is the story of Ram, or this is the story of Arjun. We did not want to take a known character, a very well-known character. Yes? Because there is an automatic resonance that we have. We as Indians, we get those stories. I'll come back to that. There is a very interesting angle to that, and I will come back to that. We wanted to tell a story that was not a known myth. Okay, this is all the starting point, and I'm talking about the evolution. This is where it starts. This is not necessarily where it ends. So, to answer your question, I'll get there. And we wanted to develop an Indian hero that Indian children can identify with. So what we said was that Vikramaditya is a vaguely known Indian hero from our traditions. Everyone has heard of Vikram and Betal. They know a little bit. Some people have heard about Vikramaditya and the Navaratnas. They've heard about Kalidasa. They've heard these names. They've heard that Kalidasa used to be a poet in Vikramaditya's court. These are all things that they've heard. They've heard that Vikramaditya had the throne. There's the Simhasan Battisi story, which is supposed to be the throne of Vikramaditya, which Raja Bhoj is supposed to, climb up. So there are lots of these legends that are around it. There are innumerable tales and legends surrounding Vikramaditya. Vikramaditya is known for his wisdom, nobility and courage. Everyone is vaguely familiar with Vikramaditya. So these were our premises when we started working on the TV show. This is the 2011. So we said, we will tell the story of Vikramaditya and his Navaratnas as a band of superheroes. That was our entire premise. We set out to say, this is what we will do. So, This was what Vikramaditya everyone knew as Vikram and Betal. And we started work first because it's an animated series, we said let's start working on the characters. And this is what my friend Paul Thomas did with the character. This is Vikramaditya and Betal. Okay, this is the way we started conceiving Vikramaditya and Betal. Okay, so now if you look at the difference between this and this, it gives you a fair idea. Anyone wants to come closer, feel free if you can't see, whatever it is. Okay, so this is the way we started taking it forward. This was the animation style we had in mind. We started developing Vikramaditya as a character. When we did this, we also started making inquiries. And I'm based in Bombay. My producer friend is also based in Bombay. The animator Paul was based, at that time was based in Pune, interestingly. Now he's based in Bangalore. In fact, we had meetings, the first meeting we had with the animator was in Pune, which is very interesting, in Viman Nagar. We started working on the cost of this, of making it an animated show for children, the way we have conceived it. And we realized that the cost of making a show the way we want to make it would be 11 lakh per episode. 11 lakh per episode. And when we found out, there were only two channels where we could pitch an idea like this. One was Cartoon Network, one was Pogo, right? And Cartoon Network and Pogo would pay per episode a maximum of 8 lakh. Which means from the day we make the first episode, we are making a loss of 3 lakh per episode. This belongs to me. I'll come to all of that. So what happened was, we realized we could not make this as a TV show. It does not work. This was a very disheartening moment for all of us because we had started working on characters. This is just 2 characters. We had worked on some 8 characters. So it was very disappointing for all of us. But what we did, so the project, we decided to kill the project. There was no way we could do it. So the project went into deep freeze and I started working on my book, my first book, which was Karachi Deception, which was a spy thriller and all of that. And then in 2013, after I'd written my first book, I was looking for ideas for my second book. So as I said, so there was cost of the TV show was expensive. The other point that you made was that why mythology? We also, no, what happens is that we realize that not doing it in Hindu mythology does not work because what happens is that there needs to be some amount of familiarity to mythology, which is why Chota Bheem worked. Okay, the funny bit is Chota Bheem has got nothing to do with Bheem. Okay, that's the funny bit. It's got nothing to do with Bheem, but they capitalized on the mythological character Bheem. Being as a strong man who eats a lot, a strong boy who eats a lot and beats up villains. That's what they did with Chota Bheem. So we said that, okay, Vikramaditya probably might be too difficult a concept for kids. We also realized that when we make a show for kids, it becomes very light. Whereas our material can be dark. And in structure, Vikramaditya can be a darker story. We also realized that and at that time we didn't have a story for the TV series, not that that matters because we didn't even get to that point. By then we had decided we are not going to do a TV series. So that's when in 2013, after I had written my first book, I was thinking of writing the next book and I realized maybe I can write this as a series of books instead of an animated TV series for kids, but as a series of books for adults. So I went to, because this idea was mine, I asked the producer and my friend Paul, who's the animator, I said, I want to do this as books. So can I do it? And both the producer and my friend, both of them said that, look, it's your idea. We anyway have done nothing on it. So you're free to do whatever you want to do. So I started working on the book. And Paul also started working on the character. Now, what I want to show you is the transition from the way we had conceived it for children to the way I started conceiving it as adults. So from this Vikramaditya, it switches to this Vikramaditya. The entire treatment changes. The way the person looks changes. Everything changes. Basically what this means, is that it suddenly stopped being a show for kids. And it moves, the storytelling itself changes. It becomes a show, a story for adults. Now what happened was, I had still had problems. I did not have a story for Vikramaditya. There was no story. Okay. I mean, I had these characters, there was no story. The superheroes have to do something to save the world, but save the world from what? Again, there was no story. The superheroes needed big villains. There were no big antagonists. So these were some of my problems. And one of the things that I've been fascinated about Greek mythology is that in Greek mythology, the gods are jealous of the human beings. This is something that I've always been fascinated with, that gods can be jealous of human beings, which means there are human beings have some things that gods want. That's the basic premise. This actually set me thinking, and I arrived at one word. Those who have read the book will know what this is. For those who haven't, do you know what this word is? Do you know what this is? What do you read? Halahal, hala hala. Right? Have you ever heard this word before? Do you know what this is? You do. How many of you know the story of the Samudra Manthan? The churning of the ocean of milk. The Devas and the Asuras churned the Sagar Manthan. There are lots of things that come out of during the churning process. Lakshmi is supposed to have come out of there. Kamadhenu, the cow, is supposed to have come out of there. Varuni, the goddess of wine. Parijat, the flower. One of the things that came out is something called halahal. That is a poison. There was a poison that came out and it started destroying the universe. And what the Devas and Asuras did was that, because it was destroying everything, what the Devas and Asuras did was they took the halahal. It was supposed to be in a pot, in a kalash. So they took the kalash first to Brahma and said, destroy this. He said, I can't do it. They took it to Vishnu. He said, I can't do it. They took it to Shiva, and what did Shiva do? He drank it. He drank it, and Parvati is supposed to have held his throat and said, don't drink it, otherwise you'll also die. Which is why he's called Nilkant. The whole poison is supposed to be stuck. The name of that poison is halahal. So halahal that is what halahal is. Okay? I was fascinated by the idea of halahal. You know what? Imagine something like the halahal. How powerful can it be if it's in the hands of somebody who's wrong? How dangerous it can be? Because it's something that destroys the world. It destroys everything, right? How dangerous can it be? So but the legend says that Shiva's drunk all of it. I started working on a premise that said, Shiva did not drink all the halahal. There was a little bit of the halahal that was still left. And so this is my story. This is how I start writing my fiction. So halahal, there is an asura who steals a little bit of the halahal. He realizes that we are doing this Samudra Manthan for Amrit. This Amrit is completely useless. There is no point in going after this Amrit. The one who has the halahal is the ruler. So if the asuras have the halahal, they are the winners. If the devas have the halahal, they are the winners. So what happens is there's this one small asura who steals a little bit of the halahal and hides it in a dagger and runs away. So that was my starting point. And from there I started working the story. But how do you link it to Vikramaditya? I don't know how you link it to Vikramaditya, right? One fine day it struck me. So I have an idea for halahal. I have a Vikramaditya story, but I still don't have the two together. Then one day it struck me that, okay, what if this asura steals this halahal, goes away. Shiva tells these asuras and devas who have come with the halahal, he drinks it and they are all very happy because he's destroyed the halahal and everything is fine. But Shiva says, brother, nahi hua hai, khatam nahi hua hai, it's not over yet. There is a little bit of halahal that's still around. There is a deva, there is an asura who has stolen it and gone. So the devas and asuras go and catch hold of that guy and they bring that dagger. So that asura already tells the asura, I bought this for us. We are going to win. We are going to be the champions. We can defeat the devas. But somehow they are able to overcome him. They take the dagger and bring it back to Shiva. And they say, please destroy this also. Shiva says that I have already consumed 95% of this poison, exposed myself once. I almost died. I can't expose myself to it again. Okay. Now what has happened is that Shiva has a dagger which has the halahal. He can't destroy it. But the Devas and Asuras have now realized that the power of this dagger. If the Asuras have the dagger, they are more powerful than the Devas. If the Devas have it, they are more powerful. Now Shiva being Shiva, he understands that the universe is about balance of power. The Asuras can't become more powerful than the Devas can't become more powerful than the Asuras. What does Shiva do? He can't give it to the Devas, he can't give it to the Asuras, he can't keep the dagger himself because this is a material thing and he's a transcendental being. So what does Shiva do? What is the force between the Devas and the Asuras? In our Hindu mythology, humans. He decides to give it to a man. He decides to give this dagger to a man to protect it, keep it from the Devas and the Asuras. And who's the man he picks? Vikramaditya. So there is my story. I've got my story. Now I know who's my hero. I know who are my villains. I have got the fundamental construct of a story in place. That is where I started working on Vikramaditya Veergatha. So what happened was I pitched this as a 3-book series. That time it was 3 books. We'll come to how it became 4 books later. It's a 3-way war between the Devas, the Asuras and mankind for control of the halahal. And the Devas and the Asuras are the antagonists of the story, right? So this was just some stuff that we at that time created for the launch of the first book. But this was the core idea. What kind of a man? So the whole idea is that who is Vikramaditya? How do you make him a hero? A god will trust Vikramaditya to protect the halahal from the Devas and the Asuras. How powerful would that man be? What kind of man would stand up against the Devas and the Asuras? Okay, so this was all promotional material that we had created at that time. So it's not just about Vikramaditya alone. It's not a one-man army. So he's also got his Navratnas. So how many of you know about Vikramaditya's Navratnas? Okay, you guys do because you've read, but those who haven't. Okay, Vikramaditya is supposed to have, now this is the legendary king Vikramaditya of Ujjain. He's supposed to have had the Navratnas or the 9 gems. The original 9 gems, they call Akbar, in Akbar's court, there is supposed to have been the Navratnas. And they also call the public sector Navratnas as Navratnas. But the original 9 gems were supposed to have been Vikramaditya's courtiers. And there were 9 of them. One was called Kalidasa, the most famous, the poet, Shakuntalam, all those Meghadutam, all that stuff. So Kalidasa. There was Dhanvantari. I don't know if you've heard about Dhanvantari. So there was Dhanvantari. There was a guy called Vetala Bhatta or Vetala Bhadra. It depends on how you pronounce it. There was Vararuchi, a very, very well-known character in Kerala, strangely enough, and that's a different story. There is Kshapanaka, Shanku, Amarasimha, Ghatakarpara, Varahamihira. There are 9 of them. I'll come to this. There's some great visuals about this later. Okay. So it's about Vikramaditya, the Navratnas. They are the warriors who protect this dagger, this halahal. Okay. So it's not. So that's how this got conceived, as it went from one book, which was the Guardians of the Halahala. This is the second, the Conspiracy at Meru. Oops, what did I do? I think I switched it off by accident. I'll just continue talking anyway. So what had happened was that, so these were 3 books. It was pitched as a 3-book idea to my publisher. And it was supposed to end by the 3rd book. But what happened was when I finished my 2nd book, what happened was that I realized that there is no way I could finish this story in 3 books. So that's how we ended up, instead of 3 books, it became 4 books. And yeah, I'm sorry, I think I just pressed one of those switches. Can you just check? Yeah. Sorry. So, so that's how so then it became 4 books. And as I said, I just finished writing the 4th book 5 days ago. Tuesday is when I think I finished it. I think I finished it on Monday or Tuesday I finished it. And is it working or is it gone? Okay. No, so what I did was I created two things. I did characters. Characters was easy for me because we had worked on the animated TV show. The characters were more or less clear to me. Okay, so I knew what each character would look like, what they would do by and large. Okay, it's also changed a little bit in the course of the writing, but by and large I knew this is what it's going to be like. But I created the characters. I created the storyline, broad storyline for book 1, book 2, and book 1 and book 2. Book 3 was essentially supposed to be a conclusion of what will happen in book 1 and book 2. Having said that, today if you were to look at that document, we would all laugh. Okay, because the story has changed so much from where it was. What happened? It's not working? Oh, okay, fair enough. So in that sense, it went through such a huge change. But yes, a lot of, it's very commendable on the part of my publisher to have commissioned 3 books on the back of 20 pages of written material. Because all he had was 3 pages of characters, 3 or 4 pages of characters. He had, I think 5 pages of story for the first book, maybe 5 or 6 for the second, and the last book was essentially 3 paragraphs. That's all I had. I said, and then this will happen, and then this battle will happen, and it will all end. And it will all end. How it will end, I didn't even written how it's going to end. So that was the problem. But I think it was very brave on the part of the publisher to back an idea which was so primitive in its thought. So we did that, and then what happened was I started writing the books. As you start writing, okay, how many are there any authors here? Anyone who's an author? You are an author. Okay, what have you written? So it's a single book, standalone, and what's it about? Okay. But as any author would know, what happens is that during the writing process, there is just so much of evolution that happens. Okay, there are ways in which things change, characters change. The importance of characters grows from 0 to nothing. There are characters who you start off with and you don't even know. Like for example, one of my favorite stories ever, and for people who have read the book series, they would know. One of the most favorite characters for a lot of readers in this book series, and this book series has lots of very interesting, fascinating characters. I think the 3 or 4 most loved characters, definitely Vikramaditya, definitely Kalidasa, definitely Shanku, and I'm sorry, Kshapanaka, okay, that's one, and I also think Shukracharya. A lot of people love these characters. Nobody likes Indra. They all hate him, okay, because he's really the villain. But Shukracharya, he was also a villain. They love that character. Shanku, the interesting thing is that if you look at the original, I hope this starts. It will, because there are some great visuals which I really want to share with you guys. Because and this is all stuff that readers have got back with, and I'll tie back with what I've been speaking to you about. Shanku, if you look at the original, as I said, there are no women in the among the Navaratnas. It's understood it was a male-dominated society, so the Navaratnas were all male. But I somehow felt that there should be women in Vikramaditya's council. So I decided to make Kshapanaka, one of them, a woman. I said, okay, this is one woman representative, just for tokenism, and that really looked like tokenism. Okay, so it was one woman who was a female. She was the only woman counselor or female character. Then what happened was I started working. So Kshapanaka was the woman, all others were male. What I did was, when I started writing Shanku's character, Shanku was originally supposed to be an 18-year-old boy, a young, precocious 18-year-old boy. But the moment I started writing him, I think within about, by the end of that day, when I first wrote that character, so if you look at the original scripts of the drawings for this, you will see that for the TV show, you will see Shanku as a boy. So there he's shown as a boy. It almost looks as this manga kind of look with this long hair and all that kind of stuff. But what happens is that when I started writing, I realized that there's so much more empathy if this character is a woman. And what we managed doing was that we were able to create, and Shanku today is one of the really loved characters because partly because of her history, she is not from a royal family. She does not have royal pedigree. Her father is a traitor to the king of Ujjaini, so he is in the dungeons. She is not from an upper caste, yet she is very loyal to Vikramaditya. She is also extremely clear. She will disobey, break rules to do things which are right. So she is a very fascinating character. She's a rebel at heart. There's a lot, but when I say she's a rebel, she's not a rebel because she wants to be a rebel, because she knows that is the right thing to do. So she's a very, very fascinating character. Are we getting there? So, okay, I'll just keep talking about it. Okay, in the meantime, if any of those who are here, if you have any quick questions, you can ask. I mean, we can keep talking about that till this comes on. Anything that you want to know about, you want to talk about? Anything. I know there are 2 or 3 readers are here. So, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, and we'll go back to him. That's, I think, that point which I made, I was telling him also, is that my ending was just 3 paragraphs, and I said, when I pitched it, I said, this is how this will end. I mean, the story will end. I did not say this is how it will end. I said the story will end. The truth is, I had 3 potential endings in mind, and I did not know which one I would pick. I honestly did not know. So I was constantly debating whether it will be this or that. So which is why even till about last year, when people would ask me, readers, my publisher, I would never tell them how it would end. But this last December 18, I went to a writing retreat. I spent 1 month in isolation. I was all alone at a place in Alibag, all by myself, and I was writing this. And I got an ending which is none of the 3. It's not any of the 3 endings that I had originally thought of. It is a completely different, and I always suspected that will happen. I'd always thought, which is why I never revealed the endings. Because if I tell you that this is the way it will end, and it doesn't end that way, you'll say, what happened? So I never revealed my ending. What I did was that this ending that I've got is completely different from those. It is also such a permanent ending, there is no debate that the story is over. So it becomes obvious that it's an inevitable end to the story. So yeah, that's, you'll know what the ending is very soon. So yeah, please, yes. Okay. So what? This is not happening? Okay, great. Okay, yeah, your question.
For example, say this, it's a card-related question. For example, say the stories of Ruskin Bond. They have emotions and they are very inherently simple. Nowadays, the cartoon scene, you have a lot of glorification in it.
Okay.
There's a villain, there's a hero. So why do you think?
All kinds of stories exist all the time. When Ruskin Bond was there was also an opposite to that, which was Neerja Guleri. Neerja Guleri would write Chandrakanta. Okay. Even today, at any point in time, there are so let's take the classics. Let's go back to the classics. Okay. So if you've got a simple human story like Oliver Twist, you also have an epic story like, for example, or if you've got a simple human story like Wuthering Heights, okay, you've also got a war story like The Three Musketeers or The Man in the Iron Mask, okay. So it all depends. See, there is space for all kinds of stories, all kinds of storytellers. So there's all kinds of space. And there are different readers. Now, every reader may or may not like my book. Every reader may or may not like Ruskin Bond's books. Okay. So it's about, and again, you can like Ruskin Bond's book and you can like my book. Okay. You can like Dangal. You can also like Dabang. There is no reason why you say just because I like Dangal, I will not like Dabang. You can like both. You can like Inception. You can also like Three Stooges. Like one is a stupid comedy, one is a cerebral story. You can like both. So there is no harm. It just there is so all kinds of stories can exist at the same time. It really doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay. Are we done with time? Okay. So I'm sorry I can't finish this one because this is gone for some reason. Yeah, I just went. So maybe we'll do this presentation. I'll just mail it to you people sometime. So okay. Thanks a lot and have a nice day. Thanks. Bye.